can't believe people play with people intelligence the way they play with people intelligence and intellect. You know, the way they do today. You know, people are telling lies for a living. You know what I mean? They actually lying to y'all for a living, but...
You know what's to me? Because who pick who he fight with.
Right.
Like if you see it and you go, oh, I'm not going because this nigga... I think I can take him.
Right.
Think about it. A lot of died because of what? Because they stayed where? In the hood, right?
Yeah.
So when I came out of jail, what did 50 do? Yo, get him an apartment in Battery Park. I ain't sell a record to do nothing yet.
Where's Battery Park at?
That's right there by the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, you was living. 50 laid you out.
He was too
I'm coming out the building,
right
he like,
there.
yo,
I would've
I
stayed
got
around.
too much beef cream on these. Move him to Battery Park. He can't go back to his mom's crib. They gonna kill him over there. Straight to Battery Park. Like that. It's a difference, like...
That's love.
Maybe we need to change the word for the youngsters. The checking in part, you know, they seem to get hung up on that word.
Yeah,
checking in.
yeah.
So if we could diversify that word and bring it up to a 2021 thing.
Right. What's the word, OG? What's the word?
Maybe we may want to tell them they need to get connected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the proper word, connected, properly connected.
Yeah.
Or whatnot.
Yeah, they get tripped up on the semantics.
Yeah, they get stuck. I mean, right there, you stuck. So then you stuck on stupid, right?
Yeah.
You're stuck on stupid, and you're not using your powers or access to powers that you have. You're looking at it as a negative versus a positive. You know, we all know if you can tap into good people wherever you go.
Wherever.
You know what I mean? It's a blessing, Rip.
Real talk. Real talk.
I mean, who want to have access to power and not use
50 Cent and Jay Prince.
Right. Titans clashing.
And it's way more than just, celebrity gossip. We're talking about some deep stuff here. Old school respect clashing head on with a whole new era of business in the music game. Trust me, the stakes feel really high on this one.
Exactly. What we're seeing unfold, it isn't just some personal squabble, is it? It's actually a fascinating look at how influence works, how it's wielded, and how it's challenged in the industry today.
Yeah, like who really runs things?
You've got these really deeply entrenched ideas about respect, about territory, kind of bumping up against a much more independent, almost corporate-minded approach.
And right in the thick of it all, you've got Tony Yayo from G-Unit. He's been dropping some seriously eye-opening takes, especially on this whole idea of checking in.
Yeah, Yayo's perspective is crucial here.
Okay, let's dive right into that checking in thing then. Because, on the surface, it might sound kind of harmless, right? Like just being polite when you roll into a new town, saying hello to the established players.
Well, that's let's say, the polished version you often hear. It's framed as a sign of respect, within the industry. A way to connect with the scene, the people who hold sway locally.
Makes sense on paper.
The story goes, it helps ensure your security, makes things smoother for you as you navigate a new city, a new environment.
But Tony Yayo, he is absolutely not buying that, not for a second.
No, he's calling it something else entirely.
He's straight up calling it what he apparently sees it as extortion. Just a way for certain individuals to line their pockets by, essentially shaking down artists.
Strong words.
Yeah, like you don't pay up. You might suddenly find yourself in a, let's say, sticky situation. It sounds a lot less like respect and way more like some kind of protection racket with a fancy name.
And that really is the crux of the matter, isn't it? This system, often kind of veiled in the language of respect and security, can apparently very easily become a demand for payment. A non-negotiable fee, maybe, for operating in a particular space, dictated by those who claim authority over those streets.
Right.
And it's worth remembering G-Unit, from their beginnings, they deliberately chose a different path, one that didn't involve playing by those traditional rules or expectations.
Oh, totally. And 50 Cent has always been his own guy, hasn't he? Just think back to all that early drama with Murder, Inc.
Right, a classic example.
He didn't back down then, didn't check in with anyone. He just carved his own lane, basically.
Precisely. That independent streak, that almost defiant image, it's core to 50 Cent's entire brand. He navigated some incredibly volatile situations early on in his career without ever subscribing to these these unwritten rules of checking in.
So naturally, when he makes the big move to Houston and he doesn't follow that traditional protocol, especially with someone as established and respected or feared as J. Prince, well, a collision of some sort felt almost inevitable, didn't it?
It really did. It set the stage.
So, okay, 50 arrives in H-Town, doesn't make the call, doesn't ask for permission, so to speak. And the word on the street was J. Prince took that as a major sign of disrespect.
That seems to be the narrative.
There were even like rumblings of pressure being applied behind the scenes,
Wow.
maybe even demands for some kind of welcome fee.
The information floating around suggests that J. Prince viewed 50 Cent's arrival, particularly with 50's clear intention of building a significant business presence there, as a direct challenge. A challenge to his long-held position of influence in Houston's music scene.
Makes sense. His turf.
Yeah, for years there was this unspoken expectation, apparently, that any major artist coming into the city would, at the very least, acknowledge his authority. So 50 Cent's lack of deference likely felt like a deliberate power move on his part.
And how did 50 respond? Predictably, maybe. In true 50 fashion.
Yeah.
He took it straight to social media, right? The memes started flying, the sarcastic captions. He basically turned the whole thing into a public spectacle, almost daring J. Prince to escalate things further.
Yeah, that public approach, that's a key part of 50 Cent's playbook, isn't it?
Yeah.
By bringing the conflict out into the open like that, he potentially disrupts those more traditional, behind-the-scenes methods of exerting influence.
Good point. Harder to operate in the shadows.
Exactly. It becomes much harder to operate covertly when the spotlight's shining that brightly.
But things did seem to get a little tense behind the scenes, didn't they? Because remember that huge $20 million G-Unit film and TV studio? The one planned for Houston?
Oh yeah, I remember the announcement. Big
Yeah.
plans.
Suddenly just picked up and moved to Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, 50's official line was about infrastructure and practical stuff, but the timing definitely raises some eyebrows.
Right. Well, 50 Cent did cite, practical considerations, existing facilities, maybe better tax incentives for the relocation. It's really difficult to ignore the backdrop of this growing friction with J. Prince.
You think it's connected?
Well, the implication is certainly there, that the environment in Houston, potentially influenced by this power struggle, may have presented too many hurdles or uncertainties for such a significant investment. It's plausible.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Even with all this apparent drama bubbling under the surface, the city of Houston itself seemed to totally embrace 50 Cent.
That is a key point.
I mean, the mayor gave him the key to the city. They even declared an official 50 Cent day. It's almost like the city establishment was publicly siding with the guy who skipped the whole checking in formality.
That's a critical observation, absolutely. It really hints at a possible shift in the dynamics of power down there. While that traditional street influence undoubtedly still exists, its absolute dominance might be, well, waning a bit.
Especially when faced with someone like 50.
Especially in the face of the economic and cultural impact that someone like 50 Cent can bring to a city. You look at his various philanthropic efforts, his business ventures, his active engagement with the local community. These actions resonate with a much broader spectrum of people, not just the music scene.
And he wasn't just taking, he was actively giving back to Houston in a pretty big way. You think about the turkey drives he did, the massive toy giveaways.
The community stuff.
Yeah, supporting school programs, even linking up with the local sports teams like the Texans and the Rockets. He was putting significant resources and real effort into the Houston community.
It's a pretty stark contrast, isn't it?
Totally. A stark contrast to the picture Tony Yayo and others have been painting about how things used to work, or maybe still do in some circles.
Absolutely. You could interpret 50 Cent's actions in Houston as a direct challenge to that traditional model of influence. He's building a different kind of leverage, really. One based on positive contributions, community goodwill. Essentially earning the city's favor through his actions, not through implied threats.
Then you had that Tony Yayo interview recently where he just really laid it all out there, didn't hold back at all.
Yeah, that Vlad TV interview made waves.
He didn't mince words, did he? Calling the whole checking in thing straight up extortion, flat out. He even brought up the tragic story of Pop Smoke as like a cautionary tale. A really grim example of the potential dangers of relying on that kind of informal street protection.
Yayo's statements were incredibly direct, yeah, and they carried a lot of weight, especially given his own history and experiences within G-Unit. By labeling checking in as extortion, he introduces this potentially significant legal dimension to the whole conflict.
Like naming it.
Exactly. And the reference to Pop Smoke, while tragic, it just underscores the very real risks associated with navigating these unofficial street alliances. The potential for severe consequences when artists don't have proper established security and instead rely on these unwritten, often murky rules.
And Yayo didn't stop there, did he? He even suggested that all this kind of talk and posturing could attract unwanted attention, like from the feds.
Yeah, he dropped the R word.
He hinted at ICO charges. That's some seriously heavy territory.
It is indeed. ARCO charges, those are federal offenses specifically targeting organized crime. Yayo suggesting that the checking-in system could potentially fall under that legal framework. That dramatically raises the stakes.
Way beyond music industry beef.
Absolutely. It implies that the fallout from this power struggle could extend far beyond the music industry itself into serious legal jeopardy.
Then, kind of adding fuel to the fire, we had that whole situation with NBA YoungBoy. Remember that?
Oh yeah, the robbery incident.
Right. He goes to Houston, apparently doesn't do the whole check-in thing, and boom, his place gets robbed.
Right, and then
Jay Prince shows up on Instagram, basically claiming he got all the stolen stuff back, like he swooped in and fixed it.
Playing the protector role, maybe.
But YoungBoy, he wasn't having any of it. He basically called it out as a clout-chasing move. Said he didn't even want the stuff back if it came from Prince.
Yeah, the NBA YoungBoy incident gives us a very public snapshot of these ongoing tensions and the very different perspectives at play. Jay Prince's Instagram post, while maybe intended to project an image of control of helpfulness,
backfired.
It was met with direct skepticism and pretty harsh criticism from YoungBoy himself. This really highlights a potential generational divide, perhaps, in how these issues are perceived and handled now. Young artists maybe aren't buying into that old system.
And look, you really can't ignore those long-standing rumors surrounding Takeoff either, and those high-stakes dice games in Houston.
That's a heavy subject, yeah. The whispers have been around for years, haven't they?
For years. About those games maybe being rigged, potentially set up as traps for artists who weren't properly connected or, crucially, hadn't checked in.
Right. The implication, though, let's be clear, never confirmed.
Never confirmed, absolutely.
Is that his tragic death might somehow tragically be linked to this unwritten code, this street-level stuff.
It's chilling to even think about.
Those rumors surrounding Takeoff are deeply concerning. And while, again, there's never been any official confirmation tying things together, they definitely contribute to this narrative of potential danger, potential exploitation associated with this alleged system of unchecked street influence, and maybe the consequences for those who don't abide by it.
And the lack of clear answers doesn't help.
Not at all. The lack of clear answers and accountability surrounding such events only fuels the kinds of concerns raised by figures like Tony Yayo.
And it's just wild to put all that alongside 50 Cent actively, building community centers and donating huge amounts of money to charities right there in Houston.
It really is like two different worlds operating in the same city.
Totally. Two completely different strategies for wielding influence.
Contrast is incredibly stark. One approach, allegedly, relies on cultivating an atmosphere of, maybe fear and maintaining control through implied threats or expectations.
The old way.
Perhaps. The other focuses on building goodwill and influence through tangible, positive contributions to the community. Essentially earning the support and respect of the city through demonstrable actions.
So when you really piece it all together, the move to Houston, the alleged disrespect, the studio relocation, the city embracing 50, Yayo's explosive comments, the YoungBoy situation, those awful Takeoff rumors, it really does feel like we're witnessing a significant power shift happening right now in Houston, doesn't it?
I think that's a fair assessment. You've got the old guard, maybe rooted in that traditional street authority represented by Jay Prince, going up against 50 Cent's much more business-oriented, independent, and frankly, public way of operating.
Yeah.
At its core, the conflict really seems to be about whether this traditional model, this street-level control, and the expectation of checking in can actually endure, especially in an era where artists have more agency, more ways to build a following, and can cultivate influence through entirely different means.
And Yayo throwing extortion and RICO into the mix just adds.
It adds a serious layer of complexity and potential legal danger, absolutely. The situation with NBA YoungBoy, that public back and forth, it underscores maybe a generational difference in how these things are handled now.
Yeah.
And those persistent tragic rumors surrounding Takeoff just highlight the potential dark side of this alleged system.
So it really makes you think, doesn't it? With 50 Cent so visibly invested in the Houston community, doing all this positive stuff, who truly holds the power now? Is it still the figure who allegedly operates more behind the scenes, relying on that old code? Or is it the one who's out there in the open, shaking hands with the mayor, building things, getting keys to the city?
And this brings us to a really interesting question, maybe for you listening to chew on. What does genuine influence even look like in today's hip-hop world? Is it still based on these long-standing, often unspoken codes, maybe backed by an element of fear?
Or is it shifting?
Or is it increasingly about economic impact, about community engagement, about building a real, tangible connection with a city and its people? As this whole situation continues to play out down in Houston, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see who ultimately shapes the future landscape of that city's incredibly important hip-hop scene.